Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I know that there's a couple of people that told me they were going to stay up because it's Friday night in Europe. So we will see if you're on here. But welcome to this Friday afternoon / evening, and we're great to be here. We thought we'd. I'm going to build the frame for what we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, but there's been a lot of feedback and a lot of legitimate concern about the length of the pandemic, which is what two-ish years now, and the for some people permanent work from home situation that where people are actually, the feedback is that people are actually working longer than they were when they were in the office pre-pandemic. And in some cases, there are some firms where bosses, unit managers are scheduling meetings into the evening, like 8 p.m. and, things like that. And then it just seems, so a lot of people are telling me that they're just worn out from Zoom fatigue, from sitting in front of a computer all day, kind of sitting. I can tell you that I know that there will be people watching this, and quite a few people in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, many of the people in my network actually live in an apartment that is smaller than what their office was. So if you kind of can imagine that type of situation, now it's been going on for quite a period of time. So there's a lot of things. So what we're going to do today is offer some tips, suggestions around what you might want to think about to better cope with this. Obviously, we can't solve anybody's problem directly, but what we can do is, we've got 4 people on here, and I'll introduce them in just a moment, let them introduce themselves, and we will be able to just kind of share our perspective on this through a natural conversation. And as with anything, if there's anything related physically, any physical medical condition or mental medical condition, please do seek the advice of somebody locally that's with you, that's certified to do so. Okay, see a doctor. In other words, don't. These are just some suggestions that you can actually have a dialogue with your doctor about. Okay, so I hope that that provides some good context. And we've got 4 great people on here. Just really quick, I'm Brett Packard. I'm the CEO and founder of the Packard Network, and basically retired banker, global banker, 30 years, 30 countries, and a caretaker, supporting my wife, taking care of her mother. And that's a bit about me. And with that, well, why don't we hand it over to Nate Leung, who's on here as well. Nate, would you like to introduce and tell everybody briefly about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, Brett, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show with you, among the other people like Joseph and Dr. Megan. Appreciate being here with you guys. So what I do is I basically help stressed out, discontent people who are working a 9 to 5. And these are the type of people who have been in the corporate lifestyle, trying to, climb the corporate ladder, and just, at the end of the day, have nothing to show for it, being stressed out, being overworked. And a lot of times when these types of people who are working these jobs, basically they spend their entire lives at the office, not having enough time for themselves and their families. So what I do is I help them alleviate that by creating an income source, which is passive income. So that way they can work on something which is like a plan B while they're still working a plan A. And you never know if the plan B will eventually take over income-wise for plan A, then that's when they can make the switch. But what I want to do is I help these folks that just want something more than what they're currently doing.
That's fantastic. What a great introduction, and what a great purpose that you have to help so many people, Nate. And all that anybody has to do is look at your feed, and you can pick up right away what Nate is doing to make an impact on this world as well. Dr. Megan Rhodes, tell us about yourself. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Brett. I'm really honored to be part of this conversation. I feel like it's an important one. Like you said, this pandemic is affecting people all over, and we're hearing the same struggles, right? So I'm working as a clinical psychologist, so I have my patients, but I also am a executive coach to SaaS executives, so in the SaaS industry. So many of the people I work with have since before the pandemic been just go all day into the night, having this really high pressure. So what I'm focusing on is helping them get their sleep in shape, because for many people, if they don't sleep well, if they don't sleep enough, then they can't function, and then everything kind of tumbles out of control. There are some people who can survive on 5 or 6 hours, Joseph, and I'm very jealous of you. But we also look at what are ways that you can change kind of your lifestyle or things, small things during the day, so that you can sleep better at night and then perform better during the day.
Fantastic introduction. Thanks, Dr. Megan Rhodes, for joining us. Mr. Joe Gonzalez, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Brett. Look, it's an honor to be here. The panel that you just introduced, I don't know, I'm just going to try to keep up with them. But I'm honored to be here. You and I go back and forth on LinkedIn for quite some time, just like I do with Nate and Megan. And to me, it's a privilege, an honor, and I respect you guys tremendously. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So what do? I work with organizations. I've been in corporate America for quite some time. I work with organizations to motivate, optimize, and align their teams. So what's the idea for me? My idea, once I get their teams aligned, it's not only look at how they perform, but when and at what times do they perform. Because if I get an individual that's on one of the teams and he's a high performer, but he's not in the right position, obviously he's not going to be able to perform at his optimum levels. So what I do, I adjust his roles, his responsibilities, and then I reassign him to where he can thrive. So what does that do? That reduces his stress levels, that reduces his anxiety levels, and that gives him the opportunity to thrive in the position where he's meant to be, not one that they just thought he should be. So that to me opens up a big old door of opportunities for many of folks in the corporate world. And that's what my focus is. My other focus is, as you already know, is to help and motivate people in our community. And that's my give, which defines my why. And that's exactly where I want to go with my life. And that's my passion and my compassion in life.
That's fantastic. And Joe, you're perfect to have on this, because you are relentless and resilient when it comes to clarity of anything you do. And all anybody has to do is tune in at roughly, 3, maybe if you're running late, 4 a.m, and they can see the inspiration, 4:00 local time in Florida. Just a quick shout out. I'm not going to go through all the people tuning in, but thank you. I can see on LinkedIn, we have a great crew. We have somebody from Nigeria here. We have somebody from that I know in Zambia here as well. So we appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll be thinking of your questions, and feel free to put them in the chat, and I will pause some of the discussion to address those as we kind of get into it a little bit, if that's okay. And what I thought we'd do is just start by, who would have ever thought that we're sitting here in the 21st century? There's a global pandemic, which I think everybody knew that could happen. And people are working from home, which before the pandemic was actually something that, are people really working or not? If they're at home, do we know that do we know, are they hanging out? Are they watching TV, or what are they doing? And, now we fast forward a couple years into it, and we find that people are actually, it's on the other extreme, that they're working so much. And, the Wall Street Journal had something, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 months ago, a couple of articles on some people have 2 computers and are doing 2 jobs. And, employer A doesn't know that they're working for employer B. So there's all kinds of, what this situation is causing, those kinds of, situations is putting a lot of pressure on people as well. And we've got some cultural issues where a lot of companies from their leadership has not led and managed people that are remote before. They were always kind of in the office. So there's a little bit of a gap in leadership. Does anybody here have would you like to kind of kick this off and just share your perspective on people that and what the goal of this session is to just offer some suggestions that people can think about doing to help with that. Anybody like to go first?
Well, I'm going to jump in if you don't mind.
Okay.
What I've
Sure,
experienced,
Joe.
Brett,
Yep.
and I had discussed it, I think, the other day with you. When it first came about that the pandemic was really at its peak, obviously where I was at, they started sending everybody home, and everybody was jumped on it. Oh, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home. Everybody was happy. But then what I found later on was 2-3 weeks into it, that they're sitting in their house, they have nowhere to go, they have nowhere to turn. The first thing that they were saying is, wow, do I really want to be home? So that question comes up. And as we notice, what I've noticed over time is, yes, they want to be home, but no, they don't want to be locked up inside their home. So a lot of them tried to transition or ask the question, can I come back and forth? Unfortunately, during the peak of the pandemic where I was at, they were not allowing you to come back to the office. So the question came about is, okay, what do they do now? A lot of them wanted to step outside. Loneliness, social isolation, confined quarters, sitting in front of a computer for X amount of time. That brought a lot more stress than when they were in the corporate world or in their office and at the work job. So they would come up and say, no, but we don't want to be home. Okay, so what do you want to do after that? So obviously everybody wants the semi-hybrid model, which you come and go as you please, which is ideal. But is that something that is going to cure all that has happened during the pandemic, where everybody is stressed out, everybody's, encountering depression, everybody's encountering loneliness and things like that? So that's the things that concern me, because I like to address the mental aspect of it. The physical aspect is one thing, but for me, the mind is the most strongest muscle that we have, or the most powerful. So if the mind goes, everything else is going to go. So that's where I would start at the beginning. That's my perspective or my opinion, not being a medical professional, but that's what I saw what was happening where I was at. And that brought me to think, whoa, is it better to be at home or is it better not to be at home? So I left a lot of questions open for these people that were encountering the mental health concerns.
Mm-hmm. Great perspective. Nate, anything you'd like to share here at the opening?
What I can share, what I started noticing, so what Joseph was saying, during the whole peak, if you want to say, March, April, May, all the way up to the summertime, right? What I started to notice is when I started to talk to people through my network, is that a lot of them were taking advantage of the situation, meaning it was an excuse not to do the work or go to work, if that makes sense. Like all these years, people have been overworked, stressed out. So this is kind of like an impromptu vacation that they didn't plan for. And a lot of them now, we're here in late 21, early 22, where people are now starting to use getting sick, because with Omicron here, and it's making a lot of headlines. A lot of people are taking advantage of Omicron by, taking, what they call a sick leave, a COVID leave, right? Where many are not. Well, I'm not gonna make any assumptions, but I feel that people are taking advantage. Don't get me wrong. I know there are people that are legitimately sick, but also on the other side of the spectrum, there's people that are, taking advantage of the situation by taking advantage of the company's COVID leave policies.
Yeah. And I guess we have to think about, what is causing all of that as well, right? And yeah.
And that is a result of being overworked and stressed out, because again, I've noticed, because the world has been kind of like at a standstill, and then now we're just catching up. We're seeing it with supply chains. We're seeing it with, everything else that's affected, and it's just playing catch up, and it's just overwhelming for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's true. And it's true that you brought up a good point there that I agree with you. Supply chain, everything's starting to catch up, but now Omicron is spreading like crazy. So what's going to be our next step? How are we going to address it as a nation, let's say, because we're in the USA? How are we as a nation going to address those well-made points that you made about people taking advantage when there's really people that are sick and people that are not? So where do we close that gap? What ideas are we going to come up with? What, I mean, I don't know, but what can we do to close that gap with everything that's been going on all at once?
Yeah. Valid question. Megan, anything from you here at the opening?
Sure.
We'll kind of dive into it. Yep.
I'm kind of processing what the others have said, but I guess kind of going back from where Joe had started off was, kind of what was it like for us to go from living our normal everyday lives to suddenly being, quarantined. And to me, I've seen perspectives from my patients that I was working with, also for myself in my own personal experience has been a lot of changes. So my fiance and I had applied, he's a Mexican native and I live in California. So we had applied for immigration for him to migrate and move to California, live happily ever after. But the embassies just shut down and stopped operating. So the only way that we could be together was for me to come down to Mexico. And I had to think really fast because we didn't know, were we going to be able to visit? Would I be able to pass the borders? What was going to happen? And so I came down here and I'm in Mexico now, still down here south of the border. So there was a lot to adjust to. We went from having a long distance relationship to suddenly being quarantined together, which was hard for people who've known each other for a long time and have been in families together. Mm-hmm. But and then adjusting to different cultures. But I think one thing that has been really tough for people is to go from a certain lifestyle and then to suddenly change it to suddenly being in one place at one time all the time. So I'll use myself and my fiance for an example. So he's from Mexico City, right? One of the biggest cities in the world. He was managing heavy metal bands. So he had a nightlife and he was out doing things, and there wasn't hardly any minute of the day where he wasn't out and about and being around people. For me, I'm a country bumpkin. I'm from Northern California, from a little rice farming town. For me, I was like, woohoo, I get to be at home, not to brag, but I have been social distancing since before it was cool. So at first for me, it was like, this is easy. And we could see that our adjustment periods were different. So for him, it hit him really hard. For me, it was more of a slow burn and took a little longer. So what are some of the things that we've done to adjust? What are some things that I would suggest to people? Well, it's psychologically, our brains are feeling as if we're trapped. And in some ways, yes, we were, right? In quarantine, we weren't able to go do the things we wanted to do. But if I'm working in my bedroom, if I have a computer in my bedroom and then I go and eat and then I come back to my bedroom and I go to sleep and all of these things are happening in my room, my brain is going to feel a lot more trapped than it actually is. Mm-hmm. But if I'm taking a walk in my community, if I'm, my fiance and I do date night every once in a while, even if we just would go and pick up food and come back, that was like my big outing for the week. And it sounds silly now, but thinking about it, my brain just needed to be able to get out and come back in. So we've been thinking of different ways to be able to kind of change up the scenery a little bit so it doesn't feel like we're just in one place all the time, even if it's just being in different places in the house, being in different places within our little neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up a valid point, and sorry, but I'll jump in a second.
Sure, that's fine. Yep.
Husband and wife, me and my wife, let's say. My wife is a country woman. She's a farmer all her life. I'm Cuban American, born in the States, raised from Cuban parents, and we had a totally different lifestyle. So when we had to both come home, it was like, now we got to spend 24, 365, 7 days a week together. We have 3 kids running around. So there was no alone time. So you'd see the little differences in her upbringing, my upbringing, not that we had any, arguments, but there was a little clash because now we have to be together every day, all day. So that's where your point is well made. So what I would do is I'd go out to the yard, start the fire, let her stay, get a little bit of downtime. I'd come back and she'd go to the gym. I'd do my thing in the mornings. So that's how we got around it. And we managed to make it work. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, like you said, they do struggle with those points because now you're going from a completely different environment to being trapped in, let's say, a little room or a little home. And you have to spend all day, every day trying to work around it. And that is kind of tough. And the mental aspect of it is the toughest approach. It's the toughest.
Yeah, and then there's the whole physical side as well, right? And I'll just,
Mhm.
I'll just throw something out there that some people might want to think about doing is that, get these desks. I have one here, and I make it a point not to sit all day, but it's an adjustable, desk. And if you do have back-to-back meetings, and many of you that are watching this do, um, you need to find a way to get on your feet as well, right? And don't just sit in the chair all day, because that's not healthy either. Okay, so stand up for some of the meetings. Some meetings are required for the camera to be on, and some are not required for the camera to be on.
Right.
So if the camera is not on, a little tip that I would give is that see if you can find a way to get your earphones and maybe get outside of your apartment or your house and walk around a little bit while you're on the meeting. If the cameras are required, then that's probably not the best thing for you. The boss may not be that impressed, but you can use your judgment. But the point is, I think what we've just heard is that tip number one is to really kind of get out, move around when you can, because your brain does feel trapped, right? We heard everybody talk about the fact that your brain feels that there's just no escaping. So escape and find a way to get out through this. So I think that's a good probably summary, hopefully, of the first tip is to get moving. I'm going to kind of pause right here. We have Cassidy from the UK, who's actually been vocal. He's on Cassidy. She's on LinkedIn right now. And Cassidy, thanks for coming in. And here's a question: what can those of us who are at the start of our career do that would support the employer and those already employed to better speak up if they see something that's not right? Okay, so Cassidy, I think this is a good one. Nate, do you have an opinion on this one?
Yeah, I mean, what I found that works really well. So again, a lot of emotional challenges are starting to come to the surface, right? Where, people who are used to be quiet, used to hold things to themselves, now are speaking up. And it's good because if I'm feeling this way, then there are other people feeling this way as well. And the way to kind of stir this at the same time, make it a win-win for the employee and the employer, is to start a conversation and to kind of be open to the idea of saying, hey, do we have 15 minutes to drop in and have a chat with, what's on my mind? And when you can kind of stir a conversation with other people who are feeling the same way, that will kind of, in other words, get people to open up and to see from other people's perspective, and also know that they're not alone in this regard.
Right. That was going to hit that right on the point, Nate. That's the perfect point. Remember, the best way that I would address it, and the best way that I give everybody an opportunity, have an open and honest dialogue. Everybody's on the level playing field. Remember, everybody has to maintain their respect, be ethical, go about it the proper way, and make sure that you maintain your integrity, your personal integrity, and maintain the integrity of the company that you work for. But be honest, be upfront, and feel that you're in a safe and trusted environment to be yourself. Because if they don't give you a safe and trusted environment to be yourself, then you have to rethink. Do you even want to be there, or do you want to make your next move? That would be my suggestion.
Absolutely. And I would second what each of you had said. And I guess I would also put on top of that is that to the leaders and to the employers, the way that you can build this safe environment is to kind of build this feedback into how you do daily business. Meaning, don't wait until somebody says, excuse me, can I please give you some feedback? You need to be soliciting that feedback and be open to it, and to make sure that the way you respond is open and safe and welcoming, because then you're not getting that feedback. Then you're not doing your job, and you're just kind of floating out there doing what you think is best, and you're not getting the feedback that you need from your people.
Right. And as we all know, we say it all the time, it starts from the top and trickles down. If you get an opportunity to have an open and honest dialogue and they don't accept it, then you know exactly what direction you're going, and you need to get out as fast as possible, because that's not a safe and trusted environment, and they're not looking out for your best interest, much less themselves. So that's the time you have to take an exit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cassidy's come back with one more, and then David Alto has a question. So Cassidy, this is a great question, Cassidy. What happens if person A sees person B struggling with coping with this, situation, and they're just not adjusting to it? And, because there are a lot of people out there that are suffering now. What would your advice be to the person, not that's going through it, but the person that's witnessing somebody going through it?
I can jump into this one.
Mhm.
This sounds a bit psychologically related.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I'll give the famous psychologist answer, which is it depends. So part of it depends on, what's your relationship with that person. If it's somebody that you, interact with often, or you have some history with them and there's that mutual trust there, you may be able to approach them more like a friend and just say, hey, I'm just noticing these things. I'm not trying to, be nosy. I'm just wanting to be of support to you. And that can open a dialogue to them, and they might be open to that. If it's somebody that you don't feel that you're quite so close with, you may even just send them a message saying, hey, I've been struggling with some things, or I totally get it if you are. It seems like, such and such and such has happened. Just checking in, just seeing how things are going. I'm open to listening if you want to talk. And that can kind of give them the opportunity to either respond and to open up, or if they feel like they're wanting to kind of take a step back, then they can do that as well.
Yeah. And I would say also, I just add on to that. That's terrific advice. Cassidy, what I would say also is like you have done, Cassidy, get on this platform and engage, right? You can, and if you don't know who to engage with, just come straight at me, hit me between the eyes,
Right.
and I'll find somebody. I'll be the first to admit. And now there's 4 of us that you're seeing on here as well, right? But just get on the platform, engage. We're here to help. We're all givers, and that's why we're on the platform. And I think Cassidy, you're using this platform in a great, prudent way. So thank you for those questions, and I hope that helps. And I hope your friends or who you've been witnessing, hopefully some of this advice will be good, for them as well. So Mr. David Alto, who is a great contributor to this platform, is a great leader. And David's asked a fantastic question. A lot of this is directed at leadership. Okay. And leadership has kind of been, for those of you that follow me, they're a target in many cases in a corporate environment of cultural reform, that there's too much management going on and not enough leadership going on. And so David's question is a great one. So many leaders not willing to change their minds when it comes to working at home. So how do we implement this shift? Because a lot of this, as we talked about at the beginning, is permanent. It's going to be here for a while. So, how do we do this? Or do we need to wait for these people to go away? Or, what can we do with leadership that way? Does anybody want to take a crack at that one? I do have a view, but if anybody'd like to. Nate?
I'll jump in.
Joe? Yep.
Oh, okay. No, Nate, you want to start?
Go ahead.
I'll
Either.
piggyback
No, I'll
off
go
you,
after
Nate. Go
you.
ahead.
I'll go after you.
All right. My thing is, if you're a leader and you understand what we're going through at this moment with all the changes that we've gone through, and you don't want to change your ways, or you don't want to adjust, or you don't want to pivot to accommodate your employees or your employees' requests at this time, then what type of a leader are you? Because everybody understands that this isn't something that we brood upon ourselves. This is something nationwide. It's a pandemic. Everybody's going through it. So why not adjust your ways, or why not accommodate your employees' requests at that time to make the changes? So to me, it's more, yes, you're a leader, but yes, you have to understand that we definitely need to get outside of our box and think outside of it so we can accommodate what we're going through right now. That's a simple response.
I guess the follow-up, the really core of that, what if that leader just, a lot of leaders I know, they don't get it. So they're, kind of just going about and they think that they know how to do it, and they may not even be aware. We've probably done more in this 15 minutes than they have,
right.
On this subject.
Right. And it's true,
So,
but most larger organizations, as you know more than I do, they have boards.
They do.
Where does the board get involved? How long before the board gets involved and say, hey, so-and-so, what are we doing? Because then we answer three major things that I like to say: risk, exposure, and liability. Where are we going to be liable for all of our employees if we don't let them, or we don't operate the way that we should, based on whatever recommendations are out there. So we're putting our employees at risk for XYZ. So where do we hold ourselves accountable for our employees? You're not a leader.
Yep.
Because if I lead, my employees get the wins, I take the losses.
That's right.
So-
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nate,
So
Nate,
that's what I would say.
yeah, that's great, Joe. Yeah, thanks. Nate, anything on this?
Yeah, what I would say to piggyback on what Joseph said is either you pivot and adjust or get left behind. I mean, the world is moving so fast, faster in the last 2 years than, we've seen in the last couple decades, right? Depending on how old we are and in our upbringing and stuff. And, this environment, this new world that we're living in, this new normal that we're living in is challenging people to get out of the comfort zone, whether they want to or not. You either gonna be on board, you're gonna play ball, or you're gonna get left behind and you're gonna miss the train. And the thing is, this environment will force management who have old ideas, old mindset, and it's gonna force them out, because I've seen it. I've seen managers who are throwing in the towel, getting, let go because they're not willing or open to being better and adjusting with what we're having with the new normal that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I've got I'll weigh in on this one. I've got a message for the leaders, as well. Take charge of this before somebody else does. Take charge of it while you're relevant, okay,
Right.
in the equation, because the moment a leader becomes irrelevant, they will have somebody like Brett Packard of the past come in and transform the entire culture. And part of that transformation, the relevant ones are always picked up to be part of the future, and the irrelevant ones, we show them the way to the competition. Okay, so it's really important that this is a critical cultural issue. And I define culture and even leadership to some extent, distinguish those things from management, okay, and all of this processes and all of these Zoom meetings. And, are so many meetings necessary, right, in this environment where people, a Zoom call with an audio only, no camera required? See a lot of polls on LinkedIn about that. But is that meeting really necessary, right? I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I would recommend, I'm going to throw out a specific suggestion for the leaders out there to do an audit of all meetings under your realm that not just you are setting up, but all the people below you are setting up at all levels. Do a full audit of that and find out if you can cut them by 75%. Okay, not 50, but 75%. That's what I would do if I were coming in as the CEO of a company. I would just do that off the top. I wouldn't go through everything in micro detail. I would force people to cut 75%. Then you figure out how to do this and take some bold moves like that, because this thing is not going away anytime soon. Even Florida, I was talking to Joe, you earlier in the week, and you were telling me that in the Miami area, they might lock down again, right? Or
They're
something.
sending people home. Yes.
Yeah, so here we go in Florida of all places, right? So which is one of the most open, parts of the country, right? So it's not going away. So take action now while you can, because the second thing that I'll say is that the best people are going to go to the best companies, okay? And for those of you best people that are watching this, you contact me and I'll help you find a better company if this doesn't get any better. Okay. So, we're offering some suggestions here. This won't fix your life, this video that we're on right now, but hopefully it'll help a little bit. But you need to make an assessment of your boss and your leader. You don't have to tell them you're doing this, but do it in your own mind, because there are companies that have been able to successfully adapt to this. And I'll just start with the high tech companies. They have found a way, to do this, right? You look at Silicon Valley, and they've been on the cutting edge of this as well. Where Apple, okay, one of my favorite companies, they've embraced the work from home, and guess what? They're still getting things done. Okay, they released the iPhone 13 and all the other stuff. And, so they're getting it. Google's getting it done. Okay. That's just Silicon Valley. The tech sector, the transformation sector, they're getting it done. Okay. So there are companies and sectors out there, and an option, if your situation doesn't get any better, is to reach out on this platform and leverage this platform and go to people like David Alto. And there's a lot of others out there that focuses on areas that maybe David doesn't focus on, that we can put you in contact with, that can help you improve your situation. So there is hope. Don't think that that this is the end. And if you are struggling, part of your responsibility is to do something about it as well. And I'm suggesting that you leverage LinkedIn. And if you don't know where to start, you can come right at any of us, and we're here to help. Okay. Yeah. David, I hope that addressed that. Cassidy wrote a note to David and said, and I agree, Cassidy, this is great. Says David Alto, we need to learn to work together. And you're right, Cassidy. And I know David would agree with that too, is that, we're all in this ship together, right? And as Joe often says, you don't fly an airplane from the passenger section. You're up front where the pilot sits, right? So that's really what this is all about, right?
Like I tell everybody, it's collaboration, not competition. There's enough to go around for everybody. Let's share the wealth. Let's enjoy it. Let's have fun while we do it, and let's grow together. We're a strong, united community. Yeah. Let's use it to leverage ourselves, and let's make it happen. Everybody here has knowledge. We all know what we're doing. Nobody's here for anything else but to help everybody and to bring all along. So let's use it to our advantage. We have 4 people here that are very, very bright people. Thank you for myself, but that we know what we're doing. So everybody can reach out to one of us.
Yeah, and culture is something that that I've transformed cultures with 20,000 people. We've got somebody from Zambia on here. Zambia went through that transformation under my leadership as CEO, and culture. Think about it as a smartphone, right? And you attempt to make a phone call with your smartphone. It can be a brand new spanking smartphone, and there's no SIM card in it. Okay. Or eSIM in today's world, right? It's not there. I don't care how hard you try. That call is not going to be made without that SIM card. And that's where the culture and the soft, that's the solution, in my opinion. A big part of the solution to this issue is, again, for leadership. The employees by themselves can't fix this, but leaders can. And you can take charge, and you've got to reprogram. We're going from 4G to 5G, right? And if you don't take that leap to 5G, you're not going to have employees and customers to, get the job done. So it's really important, leaders, that you reprogram and take some dramatic action that will make a big impact. It'd make it Monday morning. This is Friday. Cut 75% of your meetings. Do you really need those? That would, if you want to shake up an organization and do something big, okay, it's a free idea I'm giving to you right now. Cut 3 out of 4 meetings. Just mandate it throughout your entire organization. And I bet you don't go bankrupt when that happens, right? Anyway, okay, good. I don't have any other questions queued up. If there's questions, please put them out there in the comments, and we're happy to get to them. Joe, would you like to talk a little bit in more depth about the mental, some of the, you work with people on kind of the way that I'll let you explain it on the Colby system, right? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how that what specifically people can think about doing, or even talking to a professional about.
Right. As far as an individual basis, there's an assessment called Colby A. What does that do? Once you take it to 26 question assessment, basically what it narrows down to is how you operate on a daily basis. As I had stated before, there's 3 parts of the mind. You got your cognitive, which is your learned behaviors, your affective, which is your personality traits, and your conation or cognitive, which is your instinctive strengths. Amongst those instinctive strengths, if you're left to be yourself, that's how you're going to operate on a daily basis. Out of the 3, that's the only one that will never change over your lifetime, because that's just the way your modes of operation. So they give you 4 scores, which is a fact finder, a follow through, a quick start, and an implementer. What's the fact finder? My fact finder scores an 8. So as soon as someone hands me a project, the first thing I want to do is get as much information. I research before I go into my next mode, which is my follow through. I scored a 7. My scores are 8, 7, 2, 3. So I scored a 7 on my follow through. So what does that tell me? I like to systemize everything. I like to put my processes in place. I want to systemize it. I want to make sure that everything's flowing from all the information that I gathered. Now I put it in a system that makes it flow. From there, I go to my quick start, which I scored a 2. So what does that tell me in the Colby system? That if chaos breaks out, I like to re-strategize and reorganize it and calm the chaos. From there, I go to my implementer mode, which I scored a 3 is I have a vision of where I want the end to be, but I don't take it to the end because my vision is clear, but I need another team member that scores higher, that's stronger in that point to take my project till the final end. So on an individual basis, your scores are going to vary. There's no weaknesses in the Colby system. It's all based on your strengths of the way that you go about operating on a daily basis. So when we reference a Colby A system, everybody that takes a Colby A, I did it with my wife, and her and I have semi-similar scores. So we're compatible in some parts and we're not compatible in others. So if we work together, we're going to get to a point at some time where we're going to get stuck, and we're going to have to have a team member that scores in a different range to help us assist in our projects, let's say. So for individuals, it's a very valuable tool to find out the way that they operate on a daily basis, because like I stated a little while ago, if they're in a position that they're not thriving in, then to me, that's a failure for them and for the company, because they're not maximizing that individual's full potential. So by taking the Colby A, I can sit down with leadership and say, well, you have so-and-so doing projects here, when it clearly shows that he's not the project individual. But here, Mary is good at projects. Why don't you put Mary there and put Joe on this end so that Mary can start the project and Joe can finish it? But Joe's not the starter. He wants research. Mary wants to start. So with his research and Mary starting, it comes together as a team, and it's a beautiful thing. So that's a little bit more in detail what the Colby system is, just a basic information about it.
I think that's good. So there's another tool here for leaders, right? You can obviously reach out to Joe to get more detail, and he works with leaders on this system. So if you would like some tools to do that, please reach out. We have Seema from Zambia. I know Seema. Seema, thanks for tuning in. I'm over on Facebook now, and we've got, here's the question. Any thoughts on how to effectively measure productivity during this period, given the complex interventions and dynamic landscape? So Nate, do you want to take a crack at that? I'm happy to do it as well.
As far as productivity,
How to measure it. Yep. It's a big question, right?
It is. Yeah, I definitely don't have the.
I'm happy that's fine. Seema, what I would say, it probably depends on the role, obviously. So if it's Joe could talk about it. He's got something right there on his. Joe, why don't you go ahead? I've got an opinion.
No, go ahead, Brad. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. So what I would say is that if you're measuring, Seema, if you're measuring productivity, okay, that means you're a leader. So a lot of the things that we've talked about, I would specifically measuring productivity. If it's in sales, revenue generation, that doesn't change, right? With this, whether you're working remotely or not, because you're providing, products and or services to customers. So it's just really how you do that. I would say though that the way that you would traditionally measure activities would change quite a bit. So more of the inputs into this, and I would give people a lot of slack when it comes to, are you making your calls? Are you making your pipeline management, those types of things, those are all important, right? But I would be a little bit less intense and make sure that the way that you're measuring and even compensating people is more on output and outcomes for clients, okay, and for colleagues, for the team, as well. I would implement more teamwork measurements in this kind of environment, because people, everybody's a human being. And Megan, maybe you could give an opinion on this, even if you disagree, but I believe that everybody's a human, and we all are dependent, on some form of we all have social needs in one form or another, whether we're introvert or extrovert. And that's missing now in a lot of cases. It's a computer screen, right? So I would install some team metrics. So for example, if you were just measuring pre-pandemic individual sales, what I would do is maybe you can go 50% individual sales and 50% on if the team makes it. Something along those lines to encourage that collaboration. Megan, anything that I said that might be wrong or?
Yeah, no, I would agree that we're humans and we need to connect. And, part of my sleep pyramid program is the connection piece. That is one piece that has been shown through research to help our overall well-being and to effectively help our sleep, which is what I'm working on. But when we're talking about employee productivity, people need to have the freedom to make these meaningful connections. And that's a heck of a lot harder now that we're in this pandemic. So if you're giving, like you had said, a little bit of flexibility there, then we are going to be able to, in more innovative ways, be able to make these meaningful connections rather than just, putting our nose to the grindstone more hours of the day than we would like to. And kind of going back to where we started, in that people are working more hours than they're used to, because now it's not, I need to get out of the office before the janitors come and then go and drive home. We now don't have these kind of external environmental cues to stop work and then start home life, or stop work and then do our commute, where it's now very, very blurred. So I would just agree again, in that we really do need to emphasize these meaningful human connections.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in summary, Seema, what I would do, and I tend to oversimplify some things, but I think that this topic requires a shakeup, right? In many cases. And what I would do to come in and shake things up, I would cut 75% of the meetings. That would enable people to breathe and to rethink how they're doing their jobs. That's the first step I would take. Secondly, I would go more toward, in terms of productivity, I would skew more towards a team outcome and away from just a pure individual outcome. That's what I would do. It would not necessarily work in all industries, but I would say give it a go for 2 or 3 quarters. Don't do it for a month, because that's not enough time to really bring it about. But I would just do that, and maybe say for the next year, and then you can kind of be nimble and pivot as required. But I think this issue requires a shakeup, and so I would do some big things like that to shake things up. And again, don't forget, this conversation is really geared more towards the leadership. It wasn't by design. Don't forget what we talked about at the beginning of the program, for you employees out there that are not leaders, to get out there and move around, right? And to, give your brain some breathing space that we talked about at the very beginning of the program. Nate, were you trying to say something? Yeah.
I have something to add to that. So I think what we're seeing in this new normal, and I'm just going to call this the new normal because that's what it is. I think now that people are working from home, on the other side of the spectrum, I feel like a lot of people think it's all about the work that you put in, not the hours that you put in. So in other words, a lot of the burnout is because we're being overworked. Well, at the same time, the task that you do, isn't that more important? I mean, is that pretty important in terms of moving the company or the business forward? Whereas, it's not the amount of hours that you're putting in, it's the amount of quality work that you're putting in. And that's how I would look at it.
I think you phrased that much better than I did a few minutes ago when talking about back to the measurement question that Seema asked on measuring outcomes. Okay. I think, it's less about the activity that you do and the hours worked and, the inputs. I would go more towards the outputs. And again, you're giving people breathing space, right? And, we transformed a culture in the UK with a huge bank, 25,000 people. One of the first things we did was that we did away with goal setting from the top down. And we trained people on how to set their own goals. We went bottoms up. Make a long story short, after 2 years, we produced 3.8 times more than we did with the tops down process. So sometimes you turn things upside down and you do things in a non-traditional way to shake things up and give people space to breathe, because I have different ambitions than Joe does, than Megan does, than Nate does, and so we're all a bit different, and we have different. If we have different aspirations, maybe we should have different goals as well in the business, and it's difficult to do, but it is possible to do it, and the payoff is tremendous when you get more ownership at the ground level. So that's maybe a third thing that you could do is give people an opportunity to have input into what they're going to produce. Right. Yeah.
It goes back to what I do. Let people be themselves. Let them operate on their own terms.
Exactly.
And hold themselves accountable for their action for themselves. And you'll see how much better your organization will run.
Yeah.
I have a little tidbit about kind
Sure.
of the science or the psychology behind that. And I might be getting this, I got the gist of it, but I'm trying to remember way back in my education when I learned about this particular study. But they did a study where people were, I think, factory workers, and they somehow funneled in this sound. And for some of the people, they had no control over the sound. And for many people, it was very bothersome. They were less productive because there was something that they weren't in control of that was bothering them. For other people to compare for the study, they had the same sound, same people in the same kind of type of work, but there was a button that they could push. And both of the sounds were kind of intermittent. They would happen, sometimes happen not. And the button didn't really do anything, but the people thought that the button made the noise stop at some point. And they also, even though it was the same noise, the same irritation level, they felt better about and could produce better their own work. So the moral of that story is, like you said, give people options. People are going to work better if they have some sort of control. If they are able to call some shots in it, or at least be able to have a conversation about it, then that's going to help the productivity. That's going to help your bottom line.
Without a doubt. That's the beautiful thing about being a real leader. Everybody's on a level playing field.
Yeah, that's right. Let them play. The best professional sports teams, they let their people play, right? They don't,
That's right.
Worry about what the people in the bleachers are going to say about them and, all sorts of stuff. You hire the best people and let them play. Do people need guidance? Sure they do, right? But that's the leader's job, is to put that in place and do it that way. So I think we're seeing a theme emerge from this conversation around there's a lot more that leadership can be doing, maybe that they're not doing. And they can you leaders can make some radical changes in how you're doing things and probably get more engagement, more production, and have happier people as a result, right? And relieve this stress, right? So I think that's important. We got some questions queuing up. I'm back over on LinkedIn right now. And Brian Gilbert, thanks for coming in, and thanks for all of your engagement on LinkedIn. You're an incredible person. Team goals for sure will cultivate a fun, competitive environment and get one over on this issue. That said, managers should make sure team goals are realistic and push back on upper management if they're not. So, yeah, I think that we talk about middle management, senior management, obviously there's usually the problems in an organization with middle management. Joe and I've talked about this a lot. So you're right. I agree with you, Brian. We probably can't solve that one on here, but I do think that the leaders on here should think about taking some radical action in your business, and maybe taking, we've given a great idea here. Maybe you can take a tops down approach and flip it.
Right.
Why not? Right.
Right.
And flip it, but you've got to support your people. You've got to give them tools on how they would go about setting a goal. And then of course, someone's got to have a calculator to add it up to see where you're going to, come out. But it's sometimes when you're in a situation where the environment is bursting at the seams, and a lot of people, that for the leaders that are going to watch this, there are a lot of great people that are thinking about leaving your company. Okay. So it's time to do something. So I hope that you'll heed some of this advice as well. David Alto has a question, Megan, for you. It takes him seconds to fall asleep at night, but it takes his wife a while to go to sleep. What advice would you have for his wife?
Yeah, well, so again, it's kind of like the depends question, right? And
Yep.
you know me, I'm so used to working one-on-one with people, so I can say, "Ooh, great! Let me ask all the questions and get all the data, and then I can help." So the kind of general pieces are to have the same time that you wake up and fall asleep. So have an actual schedule and try to keep that, whether it's the weekend or not. So that trains your circadian rhythm. It trains your body to know that, okay, I'm going to wind down at this time. I'm going to go to sleep at this time, and then I'm going to wake up at about this time. Another thing is, for many of us, research is showing that this pandemic has brought about feelings of depression, of anxiety, of stress, of trauma, really. So depending on if she's has something on her mind that is, bothering her, that's keeping her up, that kind of a thing, definitely looking at that. Another thing that can happen is to have yourself make a 3-step nighttime routine. And it doesn't have to be very long, but just picking 3 things that are going to help you transition from work brain to sleep brain. For me, my brain wants to keep planning. And it's like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could post that. Oh, that would be a really funny way to do that. And my mind does not want to stop. So I have to do something physically so that my body starts to communicate to my brain, hey, it's time to wind down. So for me, I stretch, I meditate, and then I go to bed and read. And then I listen to a sleep cast to get my brain ready to fall asleep. So I'm going from physical to less physical to very to psychological. Another piece for people is to know whether you are salty or bland, is what I call it. So for some of us, we go and we lay in bed and we're going, I can't fall asleep. This is so terrible. I'm so frustrated. I tend to do that. So that's being salty. That happens for me also when I wake up in the middle of the night. I get really frustrated. And so what we're doing when we do that is we're training our brains to be upset or to be frustrated when we go to bed. So we're associating that. So what we need to do is spend less time in bed / do something that's going to calm us down and remind us that we're getting a little too worked up, we're getting a little salty, and that we need to tone it down. If you're bland and we wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, it's fine, then you just count sheep and then you'll probably fall back asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Stay away from the sugar too.
Yes. Yeah, I did recently post about that. We were talking all about that dark
sugar is poison. I'm glad you agreed with me when I said sugar was poison, because it can be, and it can really impact your sleep. Cassidy's come back to weigh in here, and we're getting a little short on time. So just really quickly, technically everyone is a leader, even though it's not their job title. I agree with that. This issue that we're talking about does have the best way to solve it is jointly. So right. I think by everybody taking that's great. And, we lead our work hours, how to use them. And no one is of greater importance or less than somebody else. So that's really critical, that being inclusive with everything. Inclusivity is not just, being, with who you hire, hiring inclusive diversity, but it's being inclusive to solve this problem, right? I think that, again, leaders out there, talk to your people, right? Talk to your customers. That Brian's saying that as well, that the front line, they know what's going on at the customer level, at the employee level. And I'll tell leaders something else, that if you want to know how to monitor what's going on, Brian's given another question here. I'm kind of getting through these quickly because we're running out of time. The replacement, what will replace the on-site visits that were made pre-pandemic. And one thing that leaders could do is you could, first thing I used to do in taking over a business, I would demand a review of all complaints, and I would personally go through them, because by reviewing complaints, okay, you know, do you have a complaints handling process? And some businesses I've been into, they looked at me and said, oh, we don't have them. Okay, that's not good. But for those that did, you'll learn so much about not just your customers, but your employees by reviewing those complaints. So have a look at the different indicators that way. If you're not using Net Promoter Score NPS, you should start doing that right away as well. There's so many different methods that you can use to measure what's going on the front line in a remote environment. Just do it. You can do what Apple does, right? So they do everything remotely. So a lot of things there as well. So, okay, I think sorry for the rush here. We're at about an hour. I think I got through pretty much everything that was here. Does anybody here on the panel have anything that you wish you would have said that you haven't said yet that you'd like to speak up about now before we wrap it up?
A quick thing on my end, just remember, everybody has the right to feel safe and trusted in their work environment. If at any point you feel that you don't have the right to speak up or say what you want to say, then you have to reassess where you're at and think about it twice, because you're the one that's going to suffer at the end.
Absolutely. Yep. Anything further?
I would say, for folks to really prioritize these pieces in your life that are going to help you be able to perform at your best. That means taking a look at how are you going to, if you're trying to be more productive, then you need to take some breaks. And that doesn't mean that you have to find more time in your day. It can be maybe a meeting ends 5 minutes early. Okay, boom, out the door. I got my shoes on. I'm taking a walk. Doing little things throughout your day that are going to help you feel revived and rejuvenated, and focus on that sleep, because that's the foundation that's going to make your day, that can make or break your day.
Fantastic. Nate, any parting words?
Yeah, I just want to touch on what you were talking about with middle management and then upper management. For a change to happen is to go through the process, do the work, paint the picture, control the narrative of what's going on the front line, meaning where a lot of people are getting burnt out, getting stressed out, overworked. Document that, but document it over time. And then when you have a seat at the table, then you can say, hey, look at this. We're going to go line by line. This is what's happening. What are you going to do about it? Meaning to the upper management. And put the ball in their court. Put the ball in their court and see what they say.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There are all kinds of, that's a great idea to hold accountability, right? Accountability. Right. If everybody is accountable to themselves, that's a great tool that you can do it Monday, right? So, you can start doing it that way as well. So I think that's great. Now, as we wrap up, please reach out. Joe, is there anything final, or did you get to say everything?
No, everything's great. I already said
okay.
what I need to say. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So feel free to reach out to all of us. If you want to have another one, please let us know. We don't want to, we're not doing this for entertainment. We're doing it to help. So if there's anything that we can do to, if these forums are the right forums, we don't know if they are or not. We thought we'd just give it an attempt and see if it's useful. And so we'll kind of promote this to widen the net a bit, to hopefully get the word out there. But if there is anything further that any of you in the community would like to see us talk about or do, we'd be very willing to do that as well. And I'd like to thank my colleagues and appreciate everybody coming on here today. And we hope that life will get better out there. But all of you watching this need to mobilize and make it happen yourself. Don't sit around and wait for it to happen. You've got to make it happen as well. So that's what we'll wind up doing. So with that, we'll sign off for now, and we'll see everybody